I think we can read back into it that these teams are being told before the game, this is how you beat the Bruins.
Yeah. No, I think there's no question. That's
It's
in the scouting report. Yeah.
straight up, that first game out of the break, Calgary just pushed them around all game, and they did pretty much nothing. Like it was, it was, and you're right. I think they consistently, I've thought they need to get heavier, meaner, tougher players at the trade deadline to add to this team to bring a little more of that element for sure. Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Join a premium membership to get all of my NHL and hockey writing sent straight directly to your inbox as part of the Pucks with Haggs newsletter. I also write for Boston Sports Journal, file columns after every single game. Work with some very talented people there, people like Greg Bedard, Mike Giardi. So definitely check out the Boston Sports Journal for my Bruins columns. I believe this is the 66th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. So thank you very much to friend and colleague Mick Colageo for joining me, and for the New England Hockey Journal's Mark Divver as well. Mick, why don't you plug, and Mark, if you have anything to plug too, why don't you guys take your turns and plug anywhere where they can find your stuff and where people can find your writings about hockey. Go ahead,
Mark. Go ahead, Mick. Okay, we'll do me first. My Rink Rap blog is back up, and it's rinkrapmc.com, but you don't really need to know that if you're on X, Twitter, or Facebook. Those are game blogs. I contribute to the hockey news on a seasonal basis with their big issues, writing on the Bruins end of that. And let's see, what else? I don't know what to say for myself, but I do write a weekly column on Sundays for BostonHockeyNow.com, and been watching hockey for many, many moons, as Mark has as well, and our good friend Joe Haggs.
Mark, what do we have for you? Is it the New England Hockey Journal? Do you have you have a site where you're writing?
Rinkside, Rhode Island, baby.
Rinkside, Rhode Island, yes. Every Sunday or Monday, if I don't get to it on Sunday, I kind of recap the good, bad, and ugly from the Providence Bruins weekend or week.
Yes. Those are literal subheads. This is a great site that anybody who wants to know what's going on with the P Bruins or the guys who have recently been there, recently recalled. Excellent read. I do it all the time.
Well, I'll be honest. Every time, whenever I see like the good, the bad, the ugly pop up, I want to go read it, because there's always something I'm learning about the Providence Bruins and what's going on with the inner workings of that team when I check it out. So it's always worthwhile. We appreciate you keeping us educated on the P Bruins, Mark. And it's good to see you at the Garden, like we saw you on Monday afternoon as well.
Yeah, that was my first game in Boston of the year. So
wow.
I'm an old man.
You mean the year or the season?
the traffic bothers me. The whole thing bothers me, But I took the train on Monday. And
nice.
And now that bothers you.
Yeah, now that bothers me, right?
I think we've all reached an age as crusty sports writers where things bother us a lot more than they used to. So I'm in that club as well. There's no question about it. All right, let's thank our sponsors real quick too. FanDuel Sportsbook, exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Network. Get your buckets going with your first bet on FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Basketball's obviously in full swing right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, so much more. The app is really easy to use at FanDuel Sportsbook. So download and get gambling and get betting. Just visit FanDuel.com/Boston and shoot your shot. All right. Boston Bruins snapped a 4-game losing streak. A really entertaining, gritty win against the Dallas Stars on Monday. Kind of feel good at the end of it, even though it was a struggle to get there. Mick, your take just on that 7-game homestand where they only won a couple of games, but did end on a winning note, and sort of what you make of all of that now that it's over and they're going on the road to Western Canada.
Okay, everybody's had rough patches. All the good teams have had rough patches. The Bruins finally had theirs. They had one that was smaller earlier in the year, but this was the defining one. the question is now is, did it erode their confidence as who are we now? Are we one of these top teams? And statements like tonight in Edmonton would be pertinent to that answer. And not to jump out of the question and ahead, but the other thing I got from it is that I saw the Bruins start slow a lot, and it finally, these slow starts are catching up to them, and they're paying for them, and now they're finally realizing they need to sustain what they do well. They need more 60-minute efforts, and they're hard to generate for them at the time when it's more genuine for other teams to come up with that, when the Bruins are manufacturing it. Well, they're finally knocked down a peg, and now they won't have to manufacture as much. Now they're going to feel that desperation more organically, and then we're going to find out really what they got in their golf bag, and are they really the team we've been watching all season, or are they this other team that's getting outworked a lot? And I watch other games, and teams look like they hate each other more. They're meaner, they're nastier, and that's a little bit of a thing that I just feel like other teams have to move that needle for the Bruins. And if you're not the team that moves it yourself and pushes the other club, then you're not going to last long in the playoff series. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's that time of year. I mean, it's that time of year where teams are like, you can feel the hate on the ice a little bit more, where temperatures are rising in games much faster, where the intensity and urgency is there, whether it's teams fighting to get back into the playoff structure, teams fighting to stay in the playoff structure, or teams, players fighting for jobs on teams that are going nowhere and trying to hold on, to be there next year and make a good impression. And it was funny, I forget which Bruins player this was, but one of them also was talking about how some players are playing well right now to try to get traded too, if they want out of a situation, that some of them are rising up their game or showing a different level and playing at a higher level because maybe they want to get out of wherever they are. And, that's a motivating factor for them. I hadn't even really thought about that, but it's a really good point. But I think you're seeing
like being the last year of your deal, right? Last year of contract, sort of the same thing.
Yeah. And I think you're seeing that the Bruins, my take on the losing streak was that the Bruins were not ready to meet that same intensity level. They looked like they were still on the beach somewhere for most of that 7-game homestand. I think a 7-game homestand where it was like 2 weeks straight at home, which is almost unheard of in the NHL regular season. It kind of looked like it was a very bad thing for them. Like they kicked back, they relaxed at home with friends and family. They weren't, maybe as focused and as urgent as they needed to be when all these other teams were coming in and bringing their A game. And it really showed against, Calgary, Los Angeles, Washington, teams that aren't playoff teams that came in here and got wins against the Bruins and really, I think just wanted it more than the Bruins did in those games. So I didn't read a ton as far as panic or this team is in trouble based on what I saw in them losing all those games. I just thought it was a wake-up call for them that they needed to up everything to a whole different level as all these other teams are. And I think we started to see it a little bit as it was going on. Obviously, there's some problems with this team. When Pasternak and Marchand aren't scoring, they struggle to score goals and find consistent secondary offense. The defense is porous and more leaky than it's ever been before and relying a lot more on the goalies. The special teams was the one that really,
and now
I thought,
Lindholm, right?
Right. And Lindholm's hurt, but the special teams really failed them, I thought, a lot in this losing stretch as well. Both of them, the power play and penalty kill, were struggling big time. And that was a problem for a team that's relied on good special teams all year. But to your point, and one thing that you mentioned about their confidence, there was about 10 seconds left in the third period in that game against Dallas. Charlie McAvoy had the puck down at his end. There was plenty of time to go down and try to win, make a game-winning play at the end of the third period. And instead, he just ate the puck and stood down there for like 9 or 10 seconds and just held on for overtime in the point. And I know that's the smart play. I know that probably coaches, tell players to do that in this day and age where you get a point in overtime, you get the loser point. But it also struck me as just a team that does not have a lot of confidence that things are going to go well for them right now if they go try to make a play at the end of the third period and try to win a game and get the 2 points instead of going to overtime. And I kind of read into that a team that's confidence is not at an all-time high right now, obviously. Mark, your thoughts just on what you've seen on this homestand, them losing 5 of 7 games, obviously won it on a high note, but showed some struggles in between.
Yeah, the lack of bite in their game is a concern.
Yep.
More so, I think, in the last little while, but really all season. You know, the other day, the Stars took a couple of big runs at Bruins players, namely Charlie McAvoy.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
I don't think that was a penalty, but it was a play that should have been answered in some way, shape, or form.
The one
You
where his
can't
head
have your
bounced off the
best,
glass you're talking about, right?
yeah, you can't have your best defenseman having his head knocked into the glass like that,
Yep.
and not respond to it. Earlier against Tampa, I think it was, there was a little dust up in the goal crease. Their guy ran into
Swayman.
was it Swayman that night?
Yes, I believe it was Swayman. I think it was. But somebody
And
did it to Swayman too, and Swayman got fired up and went after the guy.
And Swayman ends up with a fine for swinging his stick at the guy.
But that was Allmark. That was Allmark. Yes.
Yeah, Allmark got
okay,
the fine.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But again, not the worst thing in the world that the guy did that he kind of tried to go through the crease and cause a little ruckus there, but something that needed more of a response than there was.
Yep.
So that's a concern, especially going into the playoffs where, that was lacking, I think, against Florida on many occasions in the first round.
Oh, yeah.
And to see it again, I mean, hey, it's February. It's not April yet, but that's something, you got to address those things. I think, and
I think we can read back into it. I think we can read back into it that these teams are being told before the game, this is how you beat the Bruins.
Yeah. No, I think there's no question. That's in the scouting report. Yeah.
Straight up, that first game out of the break, Calgary just pushed them around all game, and they did pretty much nothing. Like it was, it was, and you're right. I think they consistently, I've thought they need to get heavier, meaner, tougher players at the trade deadline to add to this team to bring a little more of that element for sure. And I can definitely tell, I talked to some of the players in the room after Allmark was fine. It was funny. Montgomery didn't even realize that Allmark was fine when I asked him about it the next day. He didn't I think he just would have, assumed that was not going to be a fine, barely grazing the top of his head with a stick swing where he was protecting himself when the guy threw a shoulder at him. And a lot of the Bruins players were pissed that Allmark gets a $5,000 fine for that is the same exact fine that Jacob Trouba gets for a baseball swing at the side of Trent Frederick's head. That it doesn't seem like that should be the same fine. There should be
connected with a thud.
Totally. There should be different degrees of fines. And goalies definitely should be able to protect themselves when a guy comes flying in with a shoulder into the crease when he's trying to make a save. But the larger point to what you're talking about, there needs to be a response protecting your goalie there. There was a play, maybe it was in Dallas, where Swayman responded to somebody and started shoving them and going after them when they came into the crease too. Like, your goalie shouldn't feel like they have to be the ones that are constantly defending themselves in those situations. It should be your defensemen. It should be your guys with grit and the ability to, stand up for their teammates and really make it in no uncertain terms that you can't come into our crease and push our goalie around, and the Bruins just, they're constantly, the group that they have, I feel like, more reactive than assertive and proactive. They react to things that other teams are doing instead of really, making a stand and deciding, I'm just going to make a statement here. And that's not a good thing come playoff time.
McAvoy seems like he's muted right now in the sense that he's afraid that there's going to be some sort of miscarriage of justice if he gets involved that way. Carlo is probably the most consistently roughhouse around the crease. And if that's the case, then there's a problem.
Yeah, because that's him playing out of character and him having to do
things. Say Wotherspoon, but he's in and out of the lineup.
Yeah, but it's is Grzelcyk going to do that? Is Shattenkirk going to do that? No. They need another defenseman that that is willing to be have FU in his game and really let in no uncertain terms that you can't do anything funny around the net and that you can't take liberties with the goalie and with anything that's going on. Mark, that has to be a trade deadline improvement, right? see anything organizationally where they're going to be able to bring in players that are going to, all of a sudden bring that attitude or that style to this team.
No, I don't think there's anybody in Providence certainly that you could bring up and say, okay, you're going to be responsible for clearing the crease and kicking butt, around the net. They're not built that way. They
Yep.
don't have that guy in the organization. And, Milan Lucic doesn't play defense, but he was brought in
Right.
for just situations such as this. And obviously he's not an option. Excuse me. But yeah, it'll have to come via trade, waivers, something to get that in the lineup. Or else I think this will keep happening. And it doesn't have to be a bench clearing brawl like we had in the Montreal Philadelphia rivalry days.
1987 pregame warm-up.
But just
I wish those things still happened, Mark. I wish it was still those days.
I think that's why the Riley suspension was upheld by Bettman, because the one thing the NHL doesn't want to do is leave a crack in the door open that they would be tolerating 80s mayhem. And I think a microcosm of that is all Mark's fine. A goalie comes up, it used to be the blocker that was a weapon. Now it's the stick. Now in this case, it was the stick. It's kind of like, yeah, if the team wants to respond, but the goalie can't be hurting people with his dangerous gear. And they take hard lines on certain things. But there's other areas where the parameters are wide open for the Bruins to get harder, and they don't do it.
Well, it doesn't have to be a fight necessarily. You can down the other end of the ice, you run our goalie, we're going to run your guy over if he comes out to play a puck or even in the crease. That sends a message too. Now, I don't know if you want to go there, but at some point, maybe that should be a response. You hit our guy, we're going to hit your guy.
Part of the problem with this discussion, and this is something that naturally happens, is it sounds like we're making an indictment against the players in that room. And I know that none of us are. It's just that I saw Jesper Boquist. Did we say Jesper or Jesper? But he was throwing the body. This guy with a slight build was running around hitting people. Danton Heinen's been throwing the body more. There are guys who are trying to play the way they need to play in order to help the Bruins win hockey games. And they're not necessarily cut out for it physically or in natural playing style. But they just don't have enough of that element that's on another level of aggression, initiating aggression. Being the physical team to start with, hit first, ask questions later. Be a team that makes their defensemen look over their shoulder on their way back to the retrievals. That's been something that's really been missing in this era of the Bruins, that I was hoping that, maybe more in a Mark Messier, Glenn Murray kind of a way. You're not coming to hit, but you're coming with such speed, you'd cause the panic that way. They had skaters like that last year on this team. The ability to forecheck that way right now, it's not there as much.
Get your buckets with your first bet at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams, quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/Boston and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
I think there was a lot of effectiveness in that Dallas game from the sort of fourth line that they put together, and it was based on speed. Anthony Richard and Boquist and Brazeau was skating with them a bit, but their speed was noticeable in that game as far as having an identity on the fourth line, as far as disrupting with the speed, and to Mick's point, kind of throwing their body even there, even if that's not really their calling card, is using the speed and the body to disrupt and to make plays. And I thought it was really effective. And Brazeau, I thought, played a really good game.
He did. He had a great takeaway in the middle of the rink too.
Yeah, I think just and this is the news of this past week. Justin Brazeau gets signed to a 2-year, two-way contract for about $750K. Goes from I think he wasn't drafted, Mark, right? He's undrafted.
Six,
Um, guy,
61 goals in the OHL his final year of junior, but teams were scared away by his skating.
Yep.
But now he's worked on that. He's lost weight. He's in better condition, and now he didn't look out of place the other day for sure. And people talk about his lack of speed, but if he was matched up, I would like to see a match race between JVR and Justin Brazeau, and my money's on Braz.
with the younger legs, I think you might be right. But the JVR's got the crafty old man's game where you don't know much the lack of speed. But just your thoughts, Mark, on Anthony Richard since he's been up, on Brazeau getting signed in that game that he played, on Boquist and the way that he's played, and just if this is a shift now, if we're starting to see they made a decision with 30 games left that we're going to go a little bit more with some younger veteran guys that are going to play with speed and do some other things instead of continuing to run, Oscar Steen and Lauko out there and Beecher as they had done earlier in the year, and maybe getting some results with some guys that, are cut from a little bit of a different cloth here that they're looking at.
Yeah, I think they're looking at these guys to see what they have before they hit the trade market. I think they're going to have to hit the trade market, but
yep.
If a guy like Richard and Brazeau, if they can, prove themselves over these next few weeks, maybe they don't have to make, another deal. Maybe they can get by with one deal and not have to do more. Boquist, I think he's an NHL player, right? He's got a bunch of games under his belt. So but Richard is not. He's got some games, but if he continues to play like he has over the last since he got called up, then I think he's an NHL player. Brazeau, one game. If he keeps this up, then keep him.
Right.
But guys have come up and they shine for a game or 5 games. I think it was 2 years ago. I said after a short stretch of games by Steen, I said, "Hey, this guy's an NHL player. He doesn't need to go back down to Providence." But that wore out after a while, and he did need more time in Providence, and then he gets back up. He's good for a while, but brings nothing offensively, zero. He's not big. He snows the goalie every once in a while, but he's not making anyone nervous. So
I think they were hoping with his stubby legs that he could be really tough and strong on the puck, on the boards and in the corners, and just be a little fire hydrant out there who would be tough to knock away from possession and help the Bruins with that part of their game. And even that wasn't really there. I saw him get pushed off the puck. Guys are really good at hitting while you're before you're set and you're in motion. Then a guy like him goes over if you can hit him while he's moving. And, that's right now with the way the game is.
I've been watching Brazeau for the last 3 years or whatever in Providence, and I've yet to see him knocked off the puck.
Yeah.
He's not beating anybody in to be F1, but good luck getting the puck off him or knocking him off the puck in the offensive zone.
Well, I thought the goal he scored was really indicative of what he's going to bring to the table when he goes hard to the net, and he goes on the puck so hard that he knocks Ryan Suter's stick out of his hand and it goes flying as he's coming in and shooting that and getting to the loose puck and scoring in the slot. Like, that's a big, strong dude that just wants the puck, and you're going to go flying if you get in his way. And they could use more players like that for sure.
He's crafty in a JVR kind of way.
And he almost scored a second one on a wraparound. And I've seen him score that goal in Providence, more than once. That he's got a reach, and he gets around the net, and sometimes he can beat the goalie to the post and stuff that in. The kid made a great save Monday, but it was almost there.
We all go back to the 88 and 90 Bruins Cup runs, Cup final runs, and with varying groups and a ton of depth. You just didn't know if you said, give me a top 9 for the 88 Bruins, you probably can come pretty close. But then there's like 7 guys after that, any 3 of which might be in the lineup. And this Bruins team is reminding me of that because there's a lot of guys who seem to have NHL viability in short spurts, but which ones are going to make long careers and substantial impact on the team? It hasn't really fermented yet, and maybe it's not going to. Maybe it's just going to be whoever's hot is going to be in. Whether it's Lyndon Byers, Greg Johnston, Peter Duras, John Bice. There's just so many names you could keep on rattling off here from that era, and I think we're in that kind of thing again.
Mo LeMay, there you go.
I always bring up Mo LeMay when you talk those 88, 90.
Old hero Mo LeMay.
I remember that game when I don't know which game it was in the finals when he scored a goal. He came over the blue line and wound up and with a slap shot and scored. And I thought the roof was going to blow off the old Garden.
Yeah.
It's a this place is vibrating Jack Edwards moment, like when Marco Sturm scored in the playoffs.
Exactly.
Could you imagine Jack in the old Garden?
So I guess one other thing, a little other piece of Bruins news this week: Hampus Lindholm got hurt in that last game. As soon as that, it took an awkward fall into the boards, and you could tell by the sound that was made and the way he fell that it wasn't good as he skated off just immediately. And he tried to stay on the bench for a little while and then left, didn't return. The Bruins subsequently put Matt Patra on long-term injured reserve, sent Oscar Steen down to Providence, and brought Mason Lowry back up for a little defenseman depth there. How has Mason Lowry looked, Mark, recently? How's he been playing in Providence?
I would say he's been okay. He missed a weekend with a skate cut, and he came back this past weekend and played both games, and he was fine. I wouldn't say he was great. I wouldn't say he was dominant, which is a term I've heard other people use for his play in Providence at times. I haven't seen him dominate in the American League, but hey, that's just me.
Yeah.
But he's been okay. I don't know. I would say that I know Lowry's ahead of everyone else, I think, in the pecking order of prospects defensively.
Oh, yeah.
I think Ian Mitchell has been really good in Providence for like the last 10 games. Really good. And he gets passed over this time. Hey, that's the way it goes sometimes. But
well, you got that right shot depth right now.
Right, he's a righty.
Left shot is where the action is,
Right.
and
Right.
unfortunately for Mitchell, it's a numbers game right now.
Well, and the match, as far as matchups go, I don't even know if Lowry's playing tonight. Who knows, right? But I think they'll be doing everything they can to keep him off the ice when McDavid and Draisaitl are out there. That's just a matchup that he can't win.
Well, yeah, I don't want to see the Kevin Shattenkirk and Matt Grzelcyk pairing out for
not them either.
Any of those instances either. I mean, like thinking about the defense, thinking about Lowry coming up, Lindholm getting hurt, but even beyond that, like just all that stuff aside, I mean, I think we're all in agreement that a defenseman is the number one need for this team, right? Like a guy that potentially can play top four, certainly is going to be effective in the D zone and be a physical, tough customer around the net. Somebody that's going to help them protect those third period leads when the games are getting tight, and somebody you'd want out there in penalty kill situations. Because it looks to me like that's, a lot of people want to talk center and think we still need a top 6 center, and that the Bruins need a fourth line guy. And that's obviously why they're looking at, some of those fourth line players now that Mark mentioned. But the Bruins, I think, need a defenseman first and foremost. Am I right on that, Mark? Do you agree with that?
Well, yes, and with Lindholm out here, they haven't said what his condition is or when he'll be back, but I would expect like maybe 3 to 4 weeks for him out. So yeah, they need a defenseman. So what do you give up to get that? I guess is the follow-up question, right? Is it Jake DeBrusk? Is it, who is it? Is it Fabian Lysell?
Well, I was going to say, is Fabian Lysell the kind of guy that could be in play because, the Bruins like him and he's got value, obviously, but he might be more valuable to another organization rather than somebody they project is going to be a long-term, member of the Boston Bruins organization?
Well, I would think that he'd be in play, depending on, what the return would be.
Yeah.
I don't think, I don't know. I have a hard time saying that the Bruins have any untouchables on their prospect list.
Yeah.
Depending on the return, you don't want to give away a guy like Lysell for a rental. That wouldn't be smart.
Right.
But if you can get a guy, who you have control over for a few years, a good player who helps you this year and going forward, then that's probably worth taking a shot at least that, in my opinion. But we all know they don't have a lot of chips to play here, so I wouldn't rule him out.
Do have Factor Meals to help us out. America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit when it does get busy, when it does get crazy, when we do need a quick meal. They fuel you up fast with flavorful and nutritious ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. Takes less than 2 minutes to cook them. They're fresh, never frozen, meals ready in 2 minutes, like I said. They have calorie-conscious options, going upscale with some of the things they're offering now, like surf and surf meal options, roasted garlic filet mignon, and shrimp and Cajun spiced shrimp and salmon, which is like right in my wheelhouse. This is the kind of stuff I'm all about. So it's got everything for everybody. There's 34 plus chef prepared, dietitian approved weekly options for meals. You can get snacks, you can get breakfast items. Like it's a great deal. So if you want to get Factor Meals, go to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use the code Haggs50 to get 50% off of your first box. It's a great deal. I've tried it. It's fantastic. I recommend it to you. We love these ready to make meal kits, especially when we're on the go with our kids. So one more time, that's factormeals.com/Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. You won't be sorry if you go to Factor Meals. It gets the Haggs thumbs up seal of approval.
Yeah. Mick, defenseman in your mind, still the #1 priority for this team?
A left shot defenseman who can play with McAvoy and add some physicality that helps McAvoy not have to be all things. McAvoy has had to be Ray Bourque this season, and your best physical defenseman, your best rush defenseman, your best 3-zone monster, your best minute muncher. He's had to be all of that in a bag of chips, and it would be nice to see a player who could complement him on the physical side of the puck, and that pairing as a left shot that would take that one piece and allow him to augment offense more naturally as he does, and not feel so much, and also get the bullseye off his back a little bit on the forecheck. I just think right now that as we get closer to playoffs, he wears that target. I don't know. I get the vibe with Lysell that even though he's made huge strides this season, is now up high in the Providence Bruins scoring, that the rest of the league doesn't take any Bruins prospects seriously, and they're not looking at low-rise potential and what he could mean, and you see the good elements of his game and projecting them forward. I don't think out-of-town teams, I don't think they're looking at Bruins prospects. I think Lysell, I just don't see the return being worth it right now. I don't expect that there is something there for them to be worth trading him for. It might be worth holding on one more year and see if you can get him over that hump. And then maybe age 23 or so, whatever it'll be, then you got a player, or 22, you got a player who's be more enticing in that regard, or he'll play for you, one or the other.
I disagree, Mick. I think the fact that Patra really came onto the radar screen this year as a viable, NHL prospect moving forward. Lowry has had some flashes and certainly has shown talent, and I think the Bruins have demonstrated that they're drafting NHL talent again. And the recent influx of prospects has been at a higher level than they were originally rated by all of the draftniks that Mark loves so much, that have high opinions about all these guys, whether they've seen them play in person or not. But I think the reputation of the Bruins draft and development has actually risen this year, and I think the prospects are thought of a little more highly now than they were the previous couple of years. So I think there is
league wide. Yeah. I'm thinking. I just don't know if that's.
I think so.
Goes around that strongly. I think. Yeah. I mean, I think that they accept out there that Lowry is legit prospect. But nobody really knows yet if he's going to turn into Hampus Lindholm or Colin Miller.
But Lysel's putting up numbers. He's a former first-round pick, and he's doing it at a very young age in the AHL still, relatively speaking. So, I think he does have value around the league, and I think he is one of those players that, if you were talking about a trade, that he would certainly be. I think he would be the prospect that would be mentioned most prominently. Like to Mark's point, I don't think they're going to give him away for. Just like somebody that's going to be a placeholder for, the rest of this season to try to make a run. I think it would be in a bigger deal, and it remains to be seen if the Bruins have enough assets to actually make that kind of deal. Cap space.
I'm throwing short for him to get a recall here before the deadline. I think that's a prerequisite to any team's interest.
That's actually a question I wanted to ask Mark because I've been asked this several times. Do you anticipate Lysell is going to be up at the NHL level for a game at some point this year, just based on not only the trade stuff and potentially like a showcase for scouts and things like that, but just because he's turned things around to a certain degree in Providence, and he's really gone from like a sort of come to Jesus moment earlier in the year to actually playing and producing and sort of doing what the coaches are asking him to do, and maybe there's a bone to be thrown his way at some point this season.
I don't think there's any question that we're going to see him in Boston at some point. Whether it's for a game, 2 games, 3 games, I couldn't say, but I expect that, nobody's told me this or, there's no, I have nothing to back this up other than my gut feeling that at some point they told him that you're going to get an NHL game probably in year 2. You get your first game in year 2 and go from there, see what happens. But I don't think they're going to keep him down the whole year. I think he will get up. I think you can make a case that he has earned it. He's done better since he had a little, or since Ryan Mougenel kind of questioned where he was at. He, to his credit, he's kind of an immature kid still. But he took that to heart, I think, and realized maybe that, hey, you know what? It's not them, it's me. I gotta get this on track here. He still shows, there's still immaturity in his game. He was in Sunday's game. He looked like he was sulking at one point, like he was pissed off, whether it was because he wasn't out there on the first power play, like right away, or something else, or a coach had said something to him about maybe he was out there for 2 minutes and they said, hey, listen, dude, 40 seconds, not 2 minutes,
Right.
But he was out of sorts for, you could see it. I've watched him enough to know the look, his body language and all of that something was pissing him off. Now, we had a goal and an assist in that game. So, I would say, well, yeah, get pissed off then, if that's what it takes. But
one thing Adam McQuaid said is that he wanted to fix everything overnight, and he needed to learn that this is a process. And McQuaid says he has now embraced the process. I don't know if he'll like how long the process lasts, because it's probably going to be a lot longer than what he wants. So these fits and starts and increments are probably going to come back, and you get these moments, Mark, like you just alluded to, where along the way he's going to think, I finally got the corner turn. Now I'm going to be
Well,
damn.
and other things along the way. He's coming out early now to work on things, and he's staying out after practice to work on things at times.
Yeah.
He'll sometimes show up now. They always need a handful of shooters to get the goalies. They do an early goalie workout before practice. I've seen him show up just to shoot pucks at the goalies. That never happened, for the first year and the first half of this year.
Yeah.
There was a day when there was an optional skate. In fact, the only guys who were scheduled to skate were the injured guys, which were Zaboral and Lowry. And Lysell showed up that day and skated with those guys, on a day off, what was supposed to be a day off. So signs are that it's going the right way. So that's a positive. I think they're different in different places in their careers, Brazeau and Lysell, but the emergence of Brazeau now as, maybe a serviceable player in the NHL. And I was glad Jim Montgomery mentioned this the other day, post game, is an unbelievable tribute to the development staff in Providence. The work that they put in, to get a guy like Brazeau from, kind of an overweight, step or two slow guy when he first got here, to a guy now who is in good condition, takes care of himself maybe differently than he did back then. And now he's a viable option in the NHL at no cost, no cost. He's bottom, his salary's at the bottom of the deck.
Yep.
And it's a tribute to the work that they do in Providence.
I was amazed at the amount of weight we're talking about here. Yes, I think they were hoping to do the same thing with Nick Ritchie. I think they were thinking along the same lines. Let's see if we can whip this kid into shape, and think that, wow, what a player he would be if we could get him in shape. So they traded Danton Heinen for him, and it didn't work out.
Well, Toronto tried it first. They signed him several years ago, and he ended up in the coast. He ended up in Newfoundland, and then he was with the Marlies. And I would read mentions in their media from time to time about how he was working with a skating coach in the summer, and this and that. And he eventually, I can't remember how the Bruins got him. I think they just signed him as a free agent.
Yeah.
I think, maybe Toronto wasn't satisfied with his progress, or they didn't see that this would he'd develop this way, and Boston grabbed him. I know there were other teams that looked at him back when he was coming out of the OHL. I remember talking to a scout who had gone to see him, a scout from an Eastern Conference team, and he summarized his report on the kid as, he can't skate. And a lot of people said that back five years ago, but now, in better shape, with more experience and work put in along the way, he can keep up. He's a viable player now, I think. And it's great when a kid grabs the reins like that and makes something of himself the way he has.
Well, it struck me also as a big vote of confidence, to your point, to the Providence coaching staff, the player development staff, like all those people, to sign him to a contract before he was able to come up to the NHL and play. And I know they had to do that, but to do that and do all those things before he could even sort of like prove himself at that level, that tells me that they have a lot of confidence of what the eyes are seeing, of what they're doing down in Providence and the work and the development they're doing down there, that they can bet on players like Brazeau and provide them with some insurance, like a 2-year contract.
Well, and I think with a guy like Anthony Richard, props to the pro scouting staff.
Yeah.
headed
Yep.
by Dennis Bonvie.
Yep.
You know, Richard's been a good American Hockey League player for the last few years. I think he had 30 goals last year for Laval. And, you know, a guy that can skate like he can. And, you know, 30 goal scorers don't grow on trees in the American League, just like they don't in the National League. This
Yep.
guy's a good player. And, you know, identifying him as someone who maybe could help in the role he's in now, you know, that's a good call by them.
It
Absolutely.
used to be that the guys at this age in their careers, 26 for Brazeau, 27 for Richard, wouldn't get a sniff at this point.
No,
If you
no.
didn't do it by the time you were 23 or 22, we knew you. Those days are gone. Development, it's almost like the ADM, right, Joe, with the USA Hockey, and you don't
It is.
decide right now that a guy's going to be a player based on his age.
No, and part of it is also the salary cap and the challenges of that, and trying to find cheap help and, you know, affordable, like, to Mark's point about Brazeau's contract, to find somebody that's basically at the league minimum that could, you know, fill a spot for you in the roster and in your lineup. Those guys are gold for teams that are up against the salary cap if you can find some players like that. So that's definitely part of it too. But, like, yeah, look, NHL players are still doing skills practice work and still working on things and improving things. Like, every hockey player at every level, at every age, is an unfinished product that continues to improve and get better and develop and, you know, all that stuff. And that's, you know, what the ADM is all about. All right, let's get to the final tweet of the week here from Kip Wingirter on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Do you have any concerns about being outshot so much lately and losing the face-off battles? Any answers to fix this, Mark?
Well, I think Johnny Beecher was good on faceoffs.
He was.
Start the year.
He was pretty good on the penalty kill too, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
thought he did a good job there.
Yeah. Now I don't know. I wouldn't you know, draw an arrow from his demotion to these faceoff stats. I
Yeah.
wouldn't do that. But yeah, I mean, winning faceoffs, we all know that's critical. If you start with the puck, you know, you don't have to battle to get it. So, you know, that's a concern. I don't know what the answer is as they're currently constituted. Guys just have to get better at it, I guess.
Yeah, especially late game, special team situations, late game situations, things they're going to run into in the playoffs where they really need to win a draw to make their lives easier in certain instances, like in third periods. I think they definitely going to have to get better. And, you know, Charlie Coyle's the only guy I think there's even any degree of confidence when he goes into the faceoff circle, if you need a win, that he might be able to get it. And even with him, it's certainly not at Patrice Bergeron levels or anything like that, going in and winning faceoffs. But you do see a lot of games where he takes way more faceoffs than everybody else, and where they're trying to, you know, put him out there in those situations to try to get wins. And this might be something else that they need to look at the trade deadline, in my mind. And I've thought that for a while, is if they're going to get some kind of a fourth line upgrade, some kind of a player that they can bring in an energy, physical kind of role, try to find somebody that can win faceoffs too. You know, somebody that can bring that element as well. You know, that you could throw out there in certain situations and it could be your fourth line center. You know, I think that's an idea. I think that's not the most important thing on the shopping list as far as trade deadline goes and bringing players in. I still think it's a physical, hard-nosed defenseman. But Mick, what do you think about A, being outshot, and B, losing faceoffs coming off a game where the Bruins allowed 46 shots to Dallas and definitely lost the shot game in that one. And consistently, they've lost the faceoff battle to other teams.
God help him if Charlie Coyle gets injured.
Yeah.
But I think you see Brad Marchand taking a ton of draws if that happens. That's the kind of position they're in. I've also noticed that, especially during this slump, that they've won a lot of D-zone draws, gotten the puck out of the zone, and allowed the opponent during the shift change, the change on the fly, to reset, re-enter way too easily, with way too much speed. and it's almost like you didn't get the puck out of the zone. At least if you
Right.
did, you're all still packed in around the goalie. Instead, you're trying to go through the shift, and now it's a transition situation, and I see a lot of high quality chances against on those scenarios. I feel like they suck at that. I just want to get one word in that's off topic. Before we kind of were there before, but we haven't been for a while. But I don't know if the opportunity is going to be there with Lowry being called up. But to me, this is where Parker Wotherspoon's career gets decided. He's at that Brazo Richard age, and he got buried in New York Islanders system. And they've given him an opportunity, and he hasn't knocked it out of the park lately like he did earlier in the year.
Right. And I think that not to cut you off, Mick, but I think that plays into also them needing an upgrade at the trade deadline. It's late when the intensity, when the speed, when all that stuff has ramped up closer to playoff levels. I think Wotherspoon has struggled at times and made some mistakes that have not been the best.
Well, I know his best hockey hasn't been lately, and when he has been in lately, it's been in tougher situations. So it hasn't looked good, but he has also. It's kind of like it's been such a short window of not allowing him to grow in that and get his feet wet in it. And I feel like that's been a little too fast as far as whether or not it's a true test as to whether or not it's in him. And so I'd like to see more. I'd like to see it on this trip. And not sure that we will with Lowry up.
Mark, what do you think about Wotherspoon?
Well, I'll tell you, I've watched Parker Wotherspoon in Bridgeport for, I don't know, the last 3 years or however long it's been, like 10 times a year. I've seen him a million times in the American League. It never occurred to me that he was a legitimate possibility as an NHL player this year. I just, that's not who he was in Bridgeport. And I think, again, it's a tribute to the pro scouting staff that they could see a guy like that and see what he does well and project that in our system, this guy, we can make something of this guy,
Yeah.
So they sign him, they work with him briefly in Providence. He gets the call, and he played pretty well there for a stretch of games, like you guys said. Now it's, we've all heard it a million times. Getting to the NHL is one thing, staying there is another. Now he's got to grow. He's got to grow and, become a better, more reliable player here if he's gonna help at all down the stretch. So now we'll see how they use him and, in what situations and, whether he's a real option going forward as a top six or whether he's just strictly a 7. Or maybe he's a guy in the minors as a depth guy. I think the next few weeks are going to go a long way to deciding what he is or how they see him going forward.
He's a very old RFA with arbitration rights, by the way.
Yeah, agreed. I think he's shown enough that you could feel good about him being a 7 for sure. And he's at an age where you're not worried about it hurting his development at all. He that might be something he's really suited for. All right, Mark and Mick, thank you very much. Let's thank our sponsors real quick. FanDuel Sportsbook, get your buckets going with your first bet on FanDuel, exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Network and the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's really easy to use, and then bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. I'm glad there's not anything in here about being forced to stay awake and watch that atrocity that was the NBA All-Star game, though, with the zero defense and the clownish antics that were going on the court. Visit FanDuel.com/. And the best part for me was I don't know if you guys saw this. Bob Ryan went to Twitter and savaged the whole thing. Was the old crotchety sports writer just taking a crap on everything he was watching on the court.
Thank you. I'm gonna make sure I read that just because he's so great.
It was pretty awesome. I was just he is absolutely horrified by what he's watching right now. All right, so visit FanDuel.com/Boston and shoot your shot with the NBA. Mick Colageo and Mark Divver, thank you very much for joining me today.
For the love of God, don't sign it, JD Drew.
There you go. Take it
Thanks,
easy,
guys.
guys.
See you soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you at the rink.